Hello everybody, MegaZardX here, back at it again to give y'all another very exciting video, and for today I have none other than to talk about Hawkeye Episode 4 for my review discussion. And man, oh man, this is where things really got interesting, because I mentioned within, I think it was either, I want to say it was my Episode 1 and 2 review, where I mentioned, I was like, hey, there's one person that we saw in the previous movie, and they were going to eventually show up, and I didn't think they were going to show up as early as Episode 4, but she sure enough did. And then we got some cool fighting sequences and stuff, and then also another thing that I mentioned with Kate's mom, how I feel like she's sort of kind of associated with it. Like all of the pieces are starting to come together, and oh man, we're starting to get into the real thick of it now, though. So there's a lot of stuff to go ahead and talk about, discuss, and speculate on in terms of all the content we got within Episode 4. So let's go ahead and jump up in it, though. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and dive straight up into that Episode 4 review for Hawkeye. So starting off at the very beginning of the episode, picking up from the last tail ending events from Episode 3, we get to see that confrontation between Hawkeye and Jack. You know, Jack pointing that sword at him. He's like, don't move. And then Kate comes around the corner and is like, Jack, stop what you're doing or whatever. And then you see Kate's mom, Eleanor, come around the corner. She's like, what the heck? Do we have an Avenger up here in my house? And then Jack's like, oh, he even got his name wrong, but I guess he kind of essentially knew that he was an Avenger or whatever, though. And then this eventually led them down to kind of sit all down at the table, and they were trying to figure out exactly, well, what the heck is Kate doing with Clint, and figuring out exactly what was she kind of doing, because she did notice that somebody had logged in onto her work computer, and she was like, wait, you know anything about this? Hawkeye? Kate? Eventually, Kate confesses like, hey, I was the one that was logging up in it though, but I'm trying to help Hawkeye solve a case. And she's like, oh, really now? And then basically she was like, all right, you know what? Man, I really don't want my daughter to be associated with this though. But she was leading Clint out the door, and she was like, hey, you got kids? I know you probably, I'm gonna assume you probably do though, but please, I can't afford to lose Kate, because she already lost her previous husband, and she can't afford to lose anybody else. And she probably knew that to some level of degree that Clint was going to be able to understand it, due to the fact that, you know, in his line of work, he has lost people throughout the years and stuff like that, though. So she was wondering, could he possibly drop the case, not even worry about it, nothing anymore? But Clint said, I can't afford to do that, but one thing I can promise you is I'm gonna keep Kate safe. As Hawkeye was going down that elevator, that didn't sit well with Eleanor, and then she wound up picking up the phone. She was like, hey, it's Eleanor. Can you call me back? It's urgent. And I think that right there was that one thing I was talking about in some of my previous episode reviews, that yes, Eleanor is essentially somehow tied up with all of this. I think she must know or have some kind of connection with either Jack, or may possibly be her own thing though, but she does have some dark, shady connections, as I sort of kind of alluding to within my previous episode reviews. I just knew something wasn't right with her. I don't know, man, I just didn't know. But anyway though, after that whole event has transpired, Clint then was talking to his wife and was asking her to do some dirt digging, and he did manage to receive some information from her though. But then she also mentions that, hey, is there anything else that was missing from the Avengers compound? Because if so, it might be worth looking into. And then Clint was like, yeah, you know what, I'll go ahead and do that as well though. So it's kind of nice seeing him and his wife kind of, you know, tag teaming this up. She's kind of doing like the research digging and stuff, and then he's taking action on it and stuff like that. So I do kind of like that little interaction between the two of them though. But obviously some of his kids can kind of tell that, you know, she was talking to their dad and stuff, and it was like, oh man, how much longer is my dad gonna take in terms of finishing this case so I can be home for Christmas and stuff like that. Like, he's still got a little bit of cleaning up to do before he's gonna be home for Christmas though. So after Kate has some family time, she meets back up with Clint at their sort of kind of like secret hideout now, if you want to think about it like that, at their aunt's home. And Clint mentions to her that Sloan's a shell company that launders money for for the tracksuits, and Jack is the CEO. So now we got some official hardcore dirt on Jack himself, though. So now we know Jack for sure is associated with this stuff, legitimate 100% now. He has dirt on his hands. And, if he's the CEO and, laundering out that money to the tracksuits, now we kind of got some stuff. And, and Hawkeye was giving Kate some credit, how her intuition was right about Jack. Like, like something was kind of fishy with the man, though. But now we know that he's kind of like the head honcho-ish over all of the tracksuits. So now some pieces of the puzzle are really kind of coming together now, though. But yeah, so while they were talking about that, Kate also brought in like some movies that had some sweaters and stuff, and essentially they were kicking off like a holiday party-ish sort of kind of celebration, while still also trying to talk about all of the craziness that's going on within this case and their future plans, though. So yeah, you got to see them dress up in sweaters, make up some like dips, or not dips, but some like drinks and stuff. It kind of reminded me, like, I know at least for me, having some holiday drinks. I know we do like sherbets with some ginger ale or something like that. There was like one little drink that kind of looked like that. But yeah, it was essentially having like a good kind of Christmassy kind of time, but also just talking about the events that's going to happen with the case. And there was one part where Clint was like, hey, I can actually knock a person unconscious with a coin, like a quarter, a nickel, and a dime might have been too small for that case, but he could basically knock someone out with a coin, though. And then Kate was like, that's bull crap. Like, there's no way you can do that. And she was like, I'll forever tell people walking around that Hawkeye said he can't. And then he flicks the coin, bounces off a couple of things, and cuts off the TV. I was like, okay, that was pretty sick. He managed to teach Kate that skill as well, though. And I imagine, little things like that are gonna come in handy towards like almost the very end of the series. Like, you see that happen within movies or TV series, just weird things that you wouldn't think would make any kind of sense, and they wind up being hugely relevant towards the very end of like a critical moment. So just kind of keep your eye out on that, though. But yeah, and then eventually then things get a little more serious again, because Kate was talking to Clint, and she kind of puts two and two together and found out that the Ronin was actually Hawkeye. And then this is when Hawkeye started to talk about his past and stuff, and he explained how dark his past truly was, because really he was sort of kind of like a hitman, because like people give him missions and say, hey, I need you to hurt this person. All right, good. You accomplished that. Now we need you to go ahead and take care of this person. Kind of similar to how Natasha was sent out as a Black Widow assassin, and she had certain assignments. Like, both of those two kind of did similar things, and maybe that's why their relationship as friends, which almost felt like siblings at some points, was that close, because they were able to easily relate with one another, though. Because yeah, they did mention about how tough the times were with Hawkeye not having his family during the blimp, and he's like, hey, everybody had different ways to cope with the blimp, and that was him just kind of going back to what he normally used to do to sort of kind of mask his feelings about all the people that he lost during that short period of time, though. But anyway, though, so after all of that has transpired, Kate agrees that she's going to try to track down the trick arrows, while Hawkeye had a quick little chat with Maya's brother and tells him to convince her to fall off, her Ronin tracking, because she is really bent on trying to find the Ronin. But Hawkeye was trying to leave it pretty clear for her brother and saying that, hey, you know what? She's basically chasing a ghost. Like, tell her to back off, because I know I won't be able to convince her of this, but you being her brother is probably the only person that can tell her to lay off of this, because he's like, I don't want to see anybody else hurt, but I'm still trying to wrap up this big old case and lay this thing to bed. So tell her to basically kind of back off and stay out of my way and stuff like that, so we can kind of get things back to normal-ish. And that was basically all that talk basically entailed, though. And then once they managed to get all the trick arrows and stuff, they managed to actually go out to some apartment building, and this is kind of following up on the same little information that Clint's wife said, hey, was there anything else missing from the Avengers compound? Because eventually one of his trackers led him to this apartment building, and it's during the middle of the night, because they're gonna have to basically break in and try to get this one item, though. But remember that watch that was mentioned in early in episode 2, I believe, during the black auction, whenever they were where the dudes busted in. It's like, hey, the watch is top priority, everything else is secondary or whatever, though. Well, now they're trying to get this watch, and it was in this apartment building, and they didn't know exactly who owned the apartment building, but it was just in this building, though. And it was kind of interesting, because originally Clint was going to go up in there and try to get it, but then Kate kind of put things in her own hands, and she was like, you know what, I'm gonna do this. And of course she didn't do it the way how Clint was thinking, like breaking in, like sneaking up into the thing, busting in through the window or anything like that. No, she literally went in through the front doors thanks to helping out some old dude carry some groceries. So she definitely has a very unique and different kind of twist and spin on the way how she likes to approach things. So anyway, once she manages to get up into the apartment building, she noticed like some kind of strobe light thing was going off. Little did she know that was basically an alarm system, a silent alarm system though. She shot a couple of arrows trying to take him out or whatever though, and then she was looking around the place and then found out that, oh, you know what? Here's the watch. They were looking for the watch. She manages to get the watch. However, she also managed to find some little bit of extra information that somebody was taking some notes on his family though, and had like all of his different, his wife and his 3 kids names wrote down on a piece of paper. And eventually they found out that was, yes, Maya's apartment building. So basically Maya was kind of putting 2 and 2 together, and she basically sort of kind of found out that yes, Clint was probably associated or in some ways had some connections with the Ronin, so she was about to, put his whole family at risk though. But then this is where the fight sequences kicked in, because then Kate was attacked by Maya herself. However, Clint was saying that he was also getting attacked by Maya, but it really wasn't Maya. It was somebody else in a random old suit, but we couldn't quite tell at the moment who that person was. So both of them started fighting off each other, and both are 2 separate scenarios though. And then Clint was trying to bail Kate out, shot like a grapple hook down, and then try to have Kate try to slide down on her arrow or a bow on it, and got stuck halfway through, which was kind of funny. I was like, dang it, girl. I was like, you ain't quite up to snuff yet. But eventually she managed to make her way down there though. And then it was like 2v2 at that point, fighting on top of the building or whatever though. And eventually, after all of the fighting was kind of settled with, because the fighting was pretty cool and whatnot though, and also shooting some trick arrows and like some supersonic stuff, and almost halfway knocked out everybody that was fighting on top of that building at one moment though. Eventually, there was one moment where I think Kate, I want to say it was Kate. Kate was the one, or Kate or Clint, one of the 2, shot Maya like square on with an arrow, and she's like, all right, forget this mess. I'm out now. I'm physically hurt. Ripped the arrow out, and then she was gone. But then there was also that one other person that was still in the suit that we couldn't quite tell who it was. And then eventually, they managed to snag off that person's hood, and it was none other than Yelena from that's basically Natasha Romanoff's sister. And she finally made an appearance in this series, because we did know, based upon the ending cutscenes at the end of Black Widow, that essentially she was going to be in Hawkeye in some way, shape, or form, because that lady at the time was like, hey, you want to know who was responsible for your sister's death? Well, it was this dude. And she had a picture of Clint Barton. And that's how we knew that she was going to be associated in this series though, and she finally made an appearance within this episode 4. And then she manages to take off and stuff, and then Kate was like, who the heck was that? We got to keep things real between each other, because how else will we be able to operate if there's not some kind of level of trust? And essentially Clint was like, hey, this thing got so serious to the fact that somebody hired a Black Widow assassin to try to take care of me or / us. That way they can kind of lay this thing to rest. And it's like, you know what? This thing is getting way too serious. I need you, Kate, to back off, and I need to start doing this as a solo operation from here on out, because things are getting really dangerous. And that's essentially where the episode ends. And I was like, whole freaking shoot. So the fact that Yelena made an appearance within this episode 4 makes me think there's either 1 or 2 possible things that's going on. Either number 1, whenever remember Contessa was the one that basically sort of kind of recruited and basically has like a partnership between her and Yelena. Whenever she brought her in, she was like, hey, did she basically kind of get that as like a personal tip to her? And then she kind of putting things on her own hand, like, hey, this is personal vengeance for me to take you out because you were sort of kind of responsible for Natasha's death. I don't know if it's a personal vendetta the reason why she made an appearance and started attacking Clint like this. Or was it possible that Kate's mom managed just to say, hey, we got a problem here, and she's like, I'm gonna need some help to try to get rid of Clint, and then maybe the connection to whoever she talked to managed to contact one of the Black Widows, aka being Yelena, through Contessa, and then that's the reason why Clint was attacked by Yelena. I don't know. It's either one of those 2 things. I have a strong inkling or the feeling that it's either one of those 2 scenarios, the reason why Yelena basically made an appearance here in this episode. I'm not sure if it's personal or the fact that someone has hired her through like maybe 2 or 3 different connections or something like that though. But that is something that we're going to have to keep in mind as we go a little further on into the series though. So now we have Kate's mom being a threat. We know Jack is a CEO of basically all of the tracksuits. And then you got Yelena showing up either on her own accord or someone hired her as a hitman from some other group. So there's a lot of different things kind of coming together. And it's like, dang, it's starting to get really dangerous for Kate out there. And Clint is really going to have his hands full. It makes me really think, is this man really going to get all of this done and accomplished before Christmas Day happens? And he might wind up missing it out with his family, though. We don't know. But we're going to keep an eye on this series as we keep progressing on a little on into the future though. But that basically does it in terms of this episode review from me though. But y'all gotta let me know down in the comment section down below what all do you think about this episode 4, and is it personally your favorite one that we've gotten out of all the 4 episodes so far though. Y'all just gotta let me know down in the comment section down below though. That basically is gonna do it in terms of my review for episode 4. So if you really like this video, make sure to go ahead and hit that like button, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and that bell to stay up to date on all things Hawkeye that I feel like talking about and discussing in the foreseeable future as we're getting closer and closer to putting together all these puzzle pieces together to figure out who's really the true mastermind working in New York with these tracksuits. So remember y'all, until our video I make next, see y'all.